still will put my money on that classroom because the rigor was high, the expectations were high, the systems were clear, and teaching and learning doesn't mean you stand and deliver. I mean, you can. There's nothing wrong with that. Don't get me wrong. Not bagging on direct instruction. But wow, such a difference between the two rooms.
That powerful voice you just heard belongs to one of my two incredible guests today, Katie Kinder and Darrin Peppard, both returning to Aspire to Lead podcast. These two educational leaders have joined forces to write a powerful and wonderful book called Culture First Classroom. It's truly a game-changing book that puts relationships, joy, and connection back at the center of learning. Before we jump into this conversation, I just wanted to say thank you to all of you who supported the Aspire to Lead and language and behavior communities. Your passion for culture-driven education is why this work matters. And I know as the end of the school year is quickly approaching, you may be feeling run down, unappreciated, and looking forward to a break, but I just wanted to let you know that your work is so appreciated and the educational field and community is better because of the work that you're doing. So with that, let's get to this awesome conversation with the wonderful Katie Kinder and Darrin Peppard. Welcome back everyone to Aspire to Lead, where we will be discussing the visions, inspirations, and experiences from top educational leaders. My name is Joshua Stamper, and you can connect with me on Twitter or on Instagram at Joshua_Stamper. All right, welcome back, Aspire Leaders. I have the wonderful opportunity and privilege to have two of my wonderful friends on with me as they have a brand new book out. I'm going to put it on the screen for those who are watching on YouTube. Culture First Classroom. It is a hit. It's a beautiful book, and I can't wait to talk with them more about that. But before I do that, Katie and Darrin, thank you so much for joining me once again so we can catch up and see what's going on in your world.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. So happy to be here. Super fun.
Yeah. Likewise, Josh. Thanks so much for having us on. It's always fun when I get to hang out with Katie, and always fun when I get to hang out with you. And so three of us together, this ought to be a blast.
Let's go.
All three. That's right. So Katie, I saw you not too long ago on another podcast. We had an opportunity to be a part of a panel, and that was really fun. I don't know about you, but that was a very different format than I'm used to. And it was great to hear all of your wonderful ideas and what you're doing in the world. But will you just start us off and just share a little bit about yourself and all the wonderful things you're doing? I know you've been on a previous episode. I really want folks to go back and listen to that. It's brilliant. But will you just give us a little update?
Yeah, so I am Katie Kinder, and I have been an educator since 2006, and I love to go and love on all the teachers, specifically the baby teachers, the teachers who are in their first 5 years. We got to keep them. I've been training teachers, doing keynotes and doing contracts and being in all the schools. And so it is just an honor and a privilege to be able to do this kind of work. And then this book that Darrin and I wrote, we are just like so excited about it.
Darrin, before we jump into the book, will you just, you've been on my show quite a bit.
So like on Saturday Night Live, you get like the 5-timer jacket. I think I'm one away. So I'll be waiting for my Aspire.
I have it sitting here. I was ready to put it in the mail. I just assumed you hit that mark already. So give us a little update for you, buddy.
Yeah, super quick. Recovering high school principal, author, speaker. I do the same work that Katie does, but I really lean into the school leaders. And by leaders, obviously classroom teachers, but primarily my work is around helping our administrators just gain some clarity, be a little bit more purposeful, and just, really kind of enjoy their work again. So many of them just get so overwhelmed. Josh, you and I did a whole episode on, it's like riding a bike, except for the bike's on fire, the road's on fire, everything's on fire. Pretty much my work is to help solve that.
Sure.
Got connected with Katie a handful of years ago. And actually, I think the very first thing I ever heard Katie, listen to Katie, was the Aspire to Lead podcast. And then I met her a few weeks later in Las Vegas. But then, of course, since then, Katie and I spent a lot of time together, shared a bunch of spaces, and now we've co-authored this really cool book.
Yes. Well, that's awesome. Katie was amazing on the podcast. And so I'm going to ask a question. I want you guys to have those two different lenses. So Katie, if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to ask the question. You kind of speak on the teacher end of it. And then Darrin, if you wouldn't mind speaking on the leadership side of it. And we don't have to do that for every question, but for this one specifically, I would love for your expertise to be in the two areas. So when we're talking about culture first, I really want you to share what it truly means in the classroom for Katie, for you, with the teachers and their mind shift to prioritize culture over compliance.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we have talked about, Darrin and I. Like, we have these amazing teachers in this book who have created this lightning in a bottle, and they have these classrooms where they're just like on fire for kids. Kids are learning, they feel safe. And what is that? That's not just straight rows compliance. So it is loving those kids. It is pouring into them. It is knowing their stories. Like, we have to be people before we get to any type of curriculum. And that goes for teachers too, right? We know this. And so that goes for kids too. So we have to create the types of lessons in which kids feel like they have a high level of trust in your room, and that they can share and they can take big risks. And that really is what the book is about, is how do we create this? And it looks different for every person, because you've really got to lean into your own personality, and you have to find out what works for you. But I mean, at the core of it, it's that you're pouring into every kid every single day, and that we have to see them as people. They are not a piece of data. They're not that. So they can fully share their stories.
And Darrin, we've talked about, when we do our joint podcast episodes together, the leadership piece where you can get very much stuck in just the to-do list, the things that have to be done. And for the leadership lens here, will you just talk about, culture over compliance, specifically for those who are leading a building?
Yeah, absolutely. Back to like the origin story of this book, I teach a classroom management course, advanced classroom management. It's a graduate level course, which it's really not graduate level. I mean, maybe it is, but it's for educators who are going into the profession through an alternate route. That's primarily what I have for students, and that's through Fort Hays State University in Kansas. And so when I started teaching this class, one of the first questions I asked my new students were, what do you think of when you think of classroom management? And it's things like compliance. It's things like straight rows. It's things like, how do I respond when they misbehave? How do I control the classroom? And that, first off, that's not who I am. I know that's not who Katie is. And to me, it's got to be this shift. And I think it not only does it need to be from our classroom teachers, and so many of them are doing it brilliantly. There are 24 in this book who are doing it brilliantly, but it needs to be that leadership lens. We need to stop thinking about classroom management and start thinking about the culture that is in our classrooms. And when you want to see that culture in the classroom where everybody feels seen and heard and valued and trusted, you have to model and lead that. So your building has to be a culture first school. So as the leader, how do you create that environment where exactly what Katie just talked about, where people feel safe and able to take risk? Because in those environments where compliance is the primary thing, what we don't see at all is innovation, because nobody is going to take a risk where compliance is the primary, leadership strategy. So to me, I think that leadership lens, it has to be, I have to model the culture in my building that I want my teachers to build in their classrooms. And I have to be very intentional with communicating that with my teachers, that I want you to build culture in your classroom, not just focus on classroom management. It's time for us to get rid of that phrase. Classroom management just simply says we're in control. Bradley Skinner says it so well in the book. He opens his passage in the book with, I don't want to control my class. I want to inspire my class. And so as leaders, that's our job. We've got to create that environment.
Oh, said beautifully. I love that inspiration component of leadership, and I think that's overlooked so much. All right, let's talk about the book in the sense that it's emphasizing for building classroom culture, art and science. It's that balance, right, that we all know exists. So, Katie, start us off. Can you just share an example of where creativity and strategy come together to really transform that learning environment?
Sure. I think one of the most simple ways that we can start on day one is that we are greeting every kid at the door every single day. We hear it. We hear this. But like still, I see teachers, they're clustered up talking to friends. They're in the copy room and their kids are running a Mary Chase up in their room. And like, it has to be one of the most important things that we do as teachers. We are at our door and our engagement goes up by 30%. I mean, that's science right there. And we can tell our teacher bestie or our principal, our superintendent, or whoever we're talking to, my kids are coming and I'm going to greet them at the door every single day. So starting right there, we are going to greet every kid every single day, and we're going to learn their names and we're going to learn how to say them right. And so I always say on day one, my kids aren't loyal to me yet, right? They're loyal to each other. I teach secondary. And so I'm not going to call roll out in front of everyone, because if you butcher their name in front of everyone, that's going to be a core memory forever. And so I'm like, I'm going to have them do something. They're going to come in. They're going to find their seat. Yes, they have an assigned seat. And they're going to be filling out something, some sort of information. And I'm going to go to every single desk. And I'm going to say, tell me what you go by. I'm so glad you're here. And I see 150 kids a day. And so I give myself about 2 weeks to learn their names. And I practice and I practice and I practice. And I think right there is how you start a year out, that you have told them how important it is that I say your name right. And I'm Miss Kinder and I'm so glad you're here. And then I use a lot of love and logic. I know it's old. It is chef's kiss. It's good. Anything that happens, I'm going to say it with a smile on my face. Hey, we don't talk out in my class like that. You don't know that yet. But if you have a question, let me know. And then I just keep going. And they're like, oh, because how we love kids is that we do have high expectations, and that is doing what's right for kids. And so I think that is how you kind of set up a class. And I think it's culture. It's not necessarily management. It is, I love you too much to allow you to do that. We're going to learn up in here. And so that's how we do it.
Darrin, what about you? What strategy are you thinking of when you're thinking of transforming the learning environment?
See, this is what I love about co-authoring with Katie. Actually, this is what I love about Katie, period. I listen to Katie talk and I just get so like focused on what she's saying. I like have no idea what I'm going to say. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build on something that Katie said there. This one, Trisha Phelps, who's a leadership teacher, Licking Valley High School in Ohio. Absolutely love Trisha. One of the people in this book that actually Katie and I both have a really good relationship with, which is pretty cool. But Trisha talks about just don't sweat the small stuff. And I think so often we get so hung up on like this one thing. And I think I tell the story in the book, or maybe I just tell the story when I'm on stage. I don't remember, but I had a teacher who was so over the top on the cell phone compliance thing that I don't think she taught science. I think she taught cell phone compliance. That was her curriculum. Like that's all she did. But she was the one who in staff meetings was always on her phone. And I think when we don't sweat the small stuff, I was in a classroom a couple of days ago in a zero tolerance cell phone school, and a cell phone fell out of a kid's backpack. And the principal was in the room with me, and he got down on a knee and he picked up the phone and he just slid it back in her backpack and just went about his way. Just because the phone came out doesn't mean the kid was being disrespectful. It just was like, okay, hey, I got that for you. And to me, that's culture right there. I mean, that showed me everything. And this is an administrator I know pretty well, and it reinforced what I already knew about him. But don't sweat the small stuff, and administrators, same thing. Don't sweat the small stuff. If you are in your staff meetings and you're cracking the whip on your teachers because maybe they have a cell phone out on the table, what do you expect them to go do in a classroom? They're going to follow your lead. So I think that's one of the big ones. Another one that I'll share that I was thinking before Katie started talking is just simply how you are structuring your room. Katie talked about, being able to get around and talk to every single kid. I learned something the other day. Another mutual friend of mine and Katie, actually, I think Josh, he's a friend of yours as well. And he's a contributor in the book, but I heard him speak. Dr. Chris Culver shared a couple of weeks ago. I love Chris. I heard him talk about that. And I did not know this, but I heard him in a session in North Carolina talk about how the desk chair combos are arranged in rows historically for the ease of the custodian. I had no idea. I'd never heard that. And
it does make sense.
It does, right?
Yeah. No, Chris does his research. It is true.
I guarantee it's accurate. If he said it, it's accurate. Yeah. And it made me think about, there's a section in the book, Lori Boudreau, who is an English teacher at Papillion La Vista High School here in Omaha, a school that I'm in frequently. Lori, I invited to be in the book because I stepped into her room one day and she had this unbelievably unique room arrangement. And I just asked her about it. And I think and she talks about more than just room arrangement in terms of how you create that culture, but she's so intentional and she moves her room arrangement frequently. I've probably seen 9 different arrangements in 3 years that I've been in and out of that school. And it's all designed for, how do I get the most out of what I need today from my students and from myself? And so when we pay attention to the details, but don't sweat the small stuff. Maybe those sound like dipolar things, but they're not. Pay attention to detail, but don't sweat the small stuff. I think that's a huge piece in how we create that culture as well.
Yeah, I love that so much. Yeah, Chris Culver was just on the podcast and he did a brilliant job. He's doing awesome things. I think, Katie, weren't you speaking with him not too long ago? I feel like you guys were in the same space.
Yeah, he is. I actually call him my PLC bestie because he lives here in Oklahoma City. And so we do a lot of, I promise you, we are PLCing almost every day on Marco Polo.
Very cool.
And then I actually am meeting with him on Monday for just like a brainstorming session. And we had to be like, okay, no social. We are just doing work. But yeah, no, he is absolutely fantastic. So go check out Dr. Chris Culver because we heart him big.
No, I love it. All right, Darrin and Katie, as the school year wraps up, we often get a chance to reflect on a variety of things, right? Students, test scores, programs, things that went well, but we rarely really look at ourselves and our own practices throughout the year. So when I'm working with leaders, I always ask, did you eat breakfast each day? Did you remember to eat lunch even today? How was your sleeping patterns throughout the year? And also, did you check in on your own mental health? And a lot of times there's a lot of guilt there and folks are like, yeah, not really. Or they say, no, I didn't do anything throughout the school year to really help my mental health. And as a school leader, I've been there. I've skipped meals. I've run on stress, crashed typically at 2 or 3 p.m. each day. But I really made an effort to make some serious changes in my routines as a leader. And Magic Mind, which is a natural mental performance shot, really helped me through that because, one, it's small, it's easy. It's something that I can just have in my pocket, in my refrigerator, in my office that I can take quickly to help me stay focused, clear, energized without that caffeine crash that typically happened in the afternoon.
Yeah.
It's packed with nootropics, all natural ingredients, over 100% of your daily vitamin C and D. It's packed full of just amazing things to really support your mind and body with a long-lasting clarity. And it also helps with stress relief, which is extremely important for all educational leaders. It's not a quick fix. It's not meant to replace any coffee or caffeine drinks. It's really there to complement it. So whether you're planning for the next school year or just trying to make it to the end of the week, Magic Mind can help you be the best version of yourself, which of course is going to positively affect your team, your campus, your students, and most specifically yourself. So I want you to try it daily, even just for a week. And I promise you're going to feel a shift. I know I did. I get the monthly pack delivered right to my door, and it's been a huge game changer for me. For my Aspire listeners, you have a limited offer here created just for you with Magic Mind. So you can get up to 48% off your first subscription or 20% off your one-time purchase with the code. And you can head over to magicmind.com/ATLLT20. And then, of course, at checkout, you can claim your discount and use the code ATLLT20. I know if you're either driving and listening or doing something else, you may not remember the code for the checkout. So I've put this in the show notes for you. It's easy to click. Also has the coupon code there for you, but also you can head over to joshtamper.com. All that information is on the main page. You can just click the image. It'll take you directly there. And of course, at checkout, make sure you remember to use the code ATLLT20 to get your limited time offer with this incredible discount for all of my incredible leaders out there.
Yeah, love it.
So I want to know some early indicators. So I know, Katie, you are in classrooms all the time, supporting schools. Darrin, you're doing the same. So what are some early indicators that a classroom culture is thriving? And then also, what are some warning signs to you that maybe the culture's not doing so great and being overlooked?
Sure. So I think that active learning is rarely quiet. Like, we need to remember that it should look like a construction zone, but you can really tell the difference when you walk into a class and kids are hands-on, they're learning, they're in collaborative groups, that there are procedures in place, the teacher is facilitating the learning, and it is loud, but that's okay. Everybody's on task, 100% engagement, which is very different from walking into a room where kids are running a Mary Chase, they're unsafe, there aren't procedures in place, no one's really learning. And I think a lot of times the teacher over here that are like, well, my kids are loud because, active learning isn't quiet. Well, that's not it. We have to make sure that we have procedures in place, that they know what the procedures are when it comes to group work, that we know what our teacher expects of us. And so again, having those high expectations, yes, we are learning. We are going to learn. We are going to use every single instructional minute. Often my kids will say, do we get free time in here? And I'd be like, we got too much to do. We're going to have fun. We are going to have meaningful learning. I'm going to wrap curriculum around what is meaningful to you, but also we going to work. And, of course, one of the best things you can hear as a teacher is like, it's already time to go. Can I come in at lunch and finish this? Or, whatever project base we're working on. And so I think that those are the kind of the two things that I see. And then also, if it's completely silent or there's instrumental music playing, doesn't mean that innovation isn't happening. Sometimes there are things that we are doing. We got coffee shop vibes. I'm an ELA teacher, writing teacher. We are working on essays, and that's okay too. And that's different than being completely silent with a worksheet from 1998. And that isn't rigorous. That isn't. So I just think that you go in and you can see the difference in those two different types of classes.
I'll just build right off of that. I think one of the biggest indicators of the culture of the classroom is teaching and learning. It's not about compliance. It's not about, are all the phones put away? Are, these things happen? Whatever. It's what is happening in terms of teaching and learning, because that's why you're in that classroom. And I'll give you a quick example from a couple of classrooms I was in maybe about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and just doing walkthroughs with a leadership team that I work with in another state. I'll just say that, so I'm not like narrowing it down, but 2 different 10th grade geometry classrooms right next door to each other. The first one we go into, in both classrooms, they're reviewing for an assessment. The first classroom, kids looked like this, staring into their screens. That's all it was. And I'm going to squirrel chase for a second. Teachers, if you are putting the 1998 worksheet on the computer, it's still a freaking worksheet. That's not high level engagement, right? You're just boring the piss out of them in a different way. You just don't have to wait in line at the copier. That's the only difference.
It's true.
Sorry. I warned you. I was going to squirrel chase that one. So that's what I saw in that classroom. I go next door. And I will say, in that classroom, the teacher was circulating. It wasn't like it was horrible, but then I go next door and there's some soft music playing in the background. In this school, every room has like a 50-inch TV in it with like, they can put stuff on there, or it has like rolling announcements and that kind of stuff. This teacher had this rolling video of baby animals. I mean, we're talking like little doe and like little puppies and then kitties. And I'm like, wow, that is just, and she had her Christmas lights on and they lightly, slowly pulsed. And they were playing speed math So like speed dating, but math. And as I go to sit down with Josh, when it's my turn to go sit with Josh, I'm going to teach Josh the problem I have. Josh teaches me the problem he has. It wasn't super loud. The engagement was off the charts. You tell me which classroom probably scored better on the assessment the next day. And I'll tell you this, that room was a co-taught room. And I'll guarantee, and the other one was not, still will put my money on that classroom because the rigor was high, the expectations were high, the systems were clear, and teaching and learning doesn't mean you stand and deliver. I mean, you can. There's nothing wrong with that. Don't get me wrong. Not bagging on direct instruction, but wow, such a difference between the two rooms. So when we stepped out in the hallway and I was with the principal, I'm like, holy smokes. And he even asked me, he's like, hey, one of these, we're going to go into two rooms. One of these is a teacher I'm really struggling with. One is one I'm not. You tell me when we come out, which one. It was a no-brainer. But when we're really, really pushing teaching and learning in our classrooms, when that kind of stuff, you guys all know this. Everybody listening knows this. When you step in a room where it's freaking going on, you feel it. Like the hairs on your arms stand up. You know it. And you also know it when you step in a room and you're like, oh boy, this is bad. That's what I would say are some of the indicators. It's all about teaching and learning.
No, I love it. All right, I want to debunk something since you went on your squirrel moment, Darrin. So the term relationships is maybe overused, and sometimes teachers, they are like, okay, build relationships. I've heard that 1,000 times. I know, obviously, in the book, relationships is like a key component or ingredient to school culture. And I want you to kind of share where the slot of relationships is to both academic rigor and structure, because I feel like teachers tend to go into the other two areas, maybe spend like the first 2 weeks, Katie, like you were saying, building relationships, and then it kind of falls to the wayside as the year goes on because we've got things we got to get done. We've got timelines that we're abiding by. So share with us, just as far as the relationship piece, how that fits in to build and thrive as far as a school culture.
Sure. I mean, I think, and I said it in the last segment, and Darrin, I love your story about the two classes. Like,
yes.
Yeah, putting the 1996 worksheet on an iPad isn't innovative. It's a worksheet on an iPad. Might as well give it to them in paper because then they will put it in long-term memory. We know this now. I appreciate the story. And then the speed math. And we know that we're like, when we're teaching, we're learning. So the kids need to be teaching each other. And, when I first started in my very first English class on my very first year, and I had to teach gerund phrases and participle phrases, and I don't remember that stuff, right? And I bet you I could hand both of you a sentence and you couldn't diagram it, but you can write that way. And so I appreciate it. So when I started teaching it, well, then I started to get it. And so when our kids are teaching each other, oof, I love it. Thank you for that story, Darrin. So yeah, I think it's about wrapping rigorous lessons around what matters to our kids. It is about teaching them to speak. I'm big about Socratic seminars. I did one 2 days ago in a high school. They're like, we want to know what a Socratic circle looks like. Will you come do it? And I'm like, yeah. And it was so great because our kids, to be able to read, write, we're missing that like speaking element because we think we have to have silent classes or that's what management looks like. But our kids need to be speaking to each other, and they need to be speaking to each other in high level vocabulary. And we miss that piece sometimes. And so I really think you can have this rigorous, curriculum, and you're wrapping it around project-based learning. I mean, that's innovation that our kids are like, they're excited. Like, what can you sell tickets to? What lessons are so good that your kids come back years later and they're like, I remember that. That was awesome. But also high levels of learning. And I like what Darrin said. We always have to bring it back to student learning, always, because that's what we're here to do. And so I think that if you love your kids and you have a good relationship with them, that high levels of learning can and will happen if you put that effort in to wrap it around project-based learning and innovation. And there are some schools out here who are blocking the AI so kids can't use it. I'm going to disagree. And I'm very much about, like, we put our phones up. Dr. Nicholas Kadaris calls it digital heroin. I do at the Innovative Schools Summit, I do a 3-hour workshop on what technology and balance and all of that looks like. But AI is the future, right? So we should be teaching our kids how to use it and how to use it appropriately. Does that mean copy and paste everything? Of course not. But if we block it, then we're blocking them from growing in this changing sphere. And so I really think that we have to keep up with our kids and keep up with what is being taught, and to always be examining our practices while loving them and holding them to high expectations.
Because like if it's relevant for the kids and what they're talking about and what's in their world, and AI is one thing that is in their world. I just had that conversation with my 2 oldest kids the other day as they were trying to navigate, like, can I use this for this assignment, and what's like plagiary and what's not. And like we had a very in-depth conversation of like how it can assist you without it actually doing the work for you. Right. Sure. And so that's in their world.
It's coming out that AI will lie to you. If you ask them to give you sources, they'll just make up sources.
Yep.
And so there's all of these things that they need to know about what's happening, and our job force is changing, and we have to prepare them for that. Mm-hmm. And so there's just a difference between, I'm going to love my kids, so I'm going to let them be on their phones and have earbuds and hang out with their friends. Well, that's not loving them. You're not their friend. Like, you have high expectations for them, and you expect them to learn because you love them too much to let them not learn.
All right, Darrin, you got anything you want to add to what Katie was talking about in regards to relationships?
Yeah, I mean, I'll add just maybe a touch to it. And actually what Katie is sharing right there makes me, again, think of another classroom. A school that I have worked with for about 1.5 years was in a teacher's classroom first semester this year. A teacher who's struggling, getting much better, by the way, but go in the room and it's the chaos that Katie's talking about, because I just want to be their friend. And the teacher actually had his feet up on the desk, and it took everything I had not to smack his feet off the desk. Like, I mean, I was pissed off. It's not my school. It's not my room, but I was like, what are you doing? And what Katie says, I think, and now I've started to and I give credit to Katie every time I say it, but I'll tell people, look, hey, like Katie Kinder says, I love you too much to let you do this. And I think that's true of us as administrators. We need to love our teachers too much to allow them to do things like that too. But that has nothing to do with your relationship question, although maybe in a little way it does. But I tell a story in the book about relationship building, and my first 2 years as building principal, 2 of my assistant principals, I inherited them. I'd been an AP with them, didn't always see eye to eye with them, but they did discipline in the building, and they would frequently send a kid back to class who got kicked out of class. And their thing back to the teacher was, what have you done to build a relationship with them? Now, that I don't think is okay. That I don't think is what we should be doing. What I do think we should be doing is emphasizing that collectively as a school, as the administrator, as the teacher, the paraprofessional, the bus driver, the lunch line lady, the teacher next door, the coach, whatever, we collectively know a good chunk of the picture of who that kid is. I left out the counselor, the social worker, because they're going to be a key there too, right? But collectively, we know a lot about the kid. And it's important for us to collectively share that knowledge, so that, when we talk about the whole kid, we talk about the whole child. There's a lot of different definitions or ways to perceive that. I think a big way to perceive that is the whole child, meaning the perspective every one of us in the school has of that person. And collectively, we know this person as a whole. And if I know something that you don't know, I had a student once, and this is a story I told in my first book, all year long, doing everything he could as a senior. I mean, he'd done everything he could, freshman, sophomore plus, to not graduate. Now he's finally, here I go, I'm going to make this happen. Very last essay of the year, all he needs to do is pass it to graduate. It's due at midnight. He turns it in at 3 a.m. and his teacher tells him, see you in summer school. And I had the, what have you done to build a relationship with that kid conversation. She knew none of the things that I knew about him. When I told her the story, all of a sudden, here came the tears, and yeah, he walked the line, and she's like, my God, I had no idea. But that was as much on her as it was on me, because I wasn't doing what I needed to do as the school leader to share with her, hey, here's what you ought to know about Jeremy. Just understand all of this. Not because you should take it easy on him, not because you should give him a break, but because you should simply understand that not every kid goes home to mom and dad and their brothers and sisters. Not every kid, well, almost no kids have dinner at the dinner table anymore. But that probably doesn't even happen in the Kinder household. And right? I'm
that
probably
happens
wrong.
in my household.
Right,
We have
okay.
dinner 3 times a week. Okay, sorry.
Okay, there we go. but my point is, our kids come from so many different backgrounds. And so collectively as a building, it's not enough, I don't think, anymore for just one adult to have a significant relationship with a kid. I think multiple adults at least need to be able to contribute the knowledge they have of a kid collectively. We spend time in PLCs talking about the data of a kid. Why don't we spend time talking about the personality of the kid, the story of the kid, the information we know about the kid, so that we really are genuinely supporting the kid? Here's my summary. Relationships, don't just spend the first 2 weeks. Know your kids all the way through. It's an ongoing process, and involve everybody you can, so you get to know everything you can.
Exactly. Takes a village. All right. Well, Darrin, with my 6 kids, the likelihood of all of us sitting down is unlikely. So we do it in shifts. I just, 2 at a time. All right. Culture First Classrooms. I'm holding up for those who are watching on YouTube. Phenomenal text resource. Make sure you're reaching out and grabbing that as soon as possible. I'm going to have the link in the show notes for everyone. And I want to close on this question for you. I love working on actionable items for our listeners. So if there's something that they can do tomorrow to change the shift in culture, Katie, if it's a small actionable item for them, what can they do tomorrow?
Gosh, I think that they should create, here we are we're filming this in the 4th quarter right now.
Yeah.
I think it's creating the types of lessons, the types of vulnerability that our kids remember forever. It is having them create poetry based on their lives. It is creating experiences that last a lifetime. It is project-based learning, things that they'll come back and they'll slide into our DMs in 10 years and say, thank you for that experience. It could also be you're going to smile at your kids and laugh with them every day. You're going to smile and laugh every day. That doesn't mean you don't have a classroom environment that you're letting them do whatever they want. No, it is you are smiling and laughing with kids every day. And I think as teachers, we get bogged down with the IEP and the RTI and the PLC and the whatever other acronym we want to throw at them, and that you can take a breath and smile and laugh with your kids.
What comes to mind for you, Darrin? What's a small actionable item for them?
I'm gonna go a little meta here. Let's focus on our individual. Let's focus on us, and maybe jump up on the balcony, get yourself up to about 1,000 feet, something, and just take a pause. Katie's right. We get so caught up in all of the other stuff. So especially, as we're recording this here in the 4th quarter of the year, take a pause, get up on the balcony, kind of check in on yourself, take a little inventory. What are you doing? What have you been doing? What are maybe some things you should stop doing? What are some things you should start doing? What are some things you should continue doing? And what are some things you should consider doing to really lean into the culture in your classroom? If you start with that inventory, just that alone will help you be a little bit more aware, a little bit more conscious of the culture that you're creating in your classroom, because you're going to create that culture all the way up to the last day of school. It's an ongoing thing. So that would be my advice.
Awesome. All right. I know the school year is winding down. Maybe you have a countdown somewhere in your classroom or in your office. And I want you to understand that culture can shift at any moment. And so please take these wise words and start to implement them as soon as possible. Make sure you're grabbing the book, Culture First Classrooms, Leadership, Relationships, and Practices that Transform Schools. And then make sure that you're reaching out to Katie and Darrin, because they provide a whole host of services that are bettering educators all over this country. And I really want them to connect with you all. So Katie, what would be a good way for them to reach out to you?
Yeah, you can find me on the Book of Faces. That's Facebook, Instagram, the IG, LinkedIn. It's so silly to even say out loud, but I can't even say it out loud. You can Google me. You can Google us, and it'll come up. I'm the teal glasses lady. All of that is out there, and I would love to. Get him! Oh, yes.
We all need to be on camera together, right?
Listen, Josh, you have a early version where I wasn't doing right by the color.
I know this one's a little bit different.
Yeah, and so when I ordered those, I asked her to remake them, and she said no. And so then
I need to get an updated pair. That's what you're saying.
I'm going to send today. Yeah. I'm sending them today, so you can get the color right.
Then I have the old school ones and the new school ones.
Oh,
that'll make you those are like a collector's item.
I know. I have them. I always have them accessible. Every time I'm with Katie, I have to pull them out.
This is like a whole nother level of friendship that I feel like we just hit. So yeah, I would love to hear from you. It's an honor and a privilege to mentor and love on the teachers from all over. So please reach out.
Awesome. Darrin, what about you, bud?
Yeah. So before I tell you where you can find me, I will tell you, I keynoted a conference not too long ago, and I channeled my inner Katie Kinder. When I talked about Katie, I actually took out a pair of teal glasses and put them on while I was keynoting.
It was so fun.
You embodied her in that moment.
Like, Darrin, oh my gosh. My phone blew up when you did it. Like, I was like, and I was out of school. And so I go to look at mine. I was like, I have 51 text messages. I was like, oh my gosh. And it was all you in the glasses. It was so fun.
Hilarious. Well, it was so funny too. Later that night, somebody was telling me the story about how the people they were sitting with were like, I don't understand that. And they're like, oh my God, I have to show you this picture so you understand just how freaking cool that was that he did that. And I mean, it was hilarious. So
it was fun.
You can find me on all of the socials, Darrin M. Peppard. And actually the best website, we've got darrinandpeppard.com on here, but the best actually is roadtoawesome.net. But just hit me up on social media. You could probably, use the Google machine to find me as well, but definitely reach out. Let's talk about putting culture first in every single classroom, because it's critical. It has to happen.
It does have to happen. Yes. So we'll make sure everything is in the show notes. I'll make it easier so you don't have to go to the Google to find all these wonderful folks. But as we are winding down, I just wanted to thank you both, for a lot of things. One, for helping educators, for all the supports that you're providing to school districts all over the country, but then also just being phenomenal folks and people. I truly am honored to call you friends, and I just appreciate you so much joining me on this episode to talk about your phenomenal book.
It is an honor to be with you 100%. And in your presence.
You guys are awesome.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah, appreciate you.
This podcast is a proud member of the Teach Better Podcast Network. Better today, better tomorrow, and the podcast to get you there. Explore more podcasts at www.teachbetterpodcastnetwork.com. We'll see you on the next episode.